Go ahead.
Go. Okay, we are open. Introductions, beginning with Mr. Daniels.
Bill Daniels.
Troy Bollinger.
And Derek Kuhl.
Karen Morey.
Doug Neely.
Alicia Hammock.
Jeff Sargent. Phil Lewis.
And Jonathan Waverly.
Okay, approval of minutes. Minutes of July 25th, 2019 have been distributed. Any corrections, additions? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved as distributed. No citizens. This is going nice and easy.
I guess I should have made a statement. I wasn't excused. I just screwed up and didn't go. So there was no excuse for me being absent.
We excused you
It was very,
afterwards.
very kind for me to show up that way. But
No, it actually means we accepted your excuse. Okay, all right, presentations, Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park, Kurt Lango. You are on.
Thank you. My name is Kurt Lango. I'm with Lango Hansen Landscape Architects, and we are the designers for the Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park. We were hired several months ago by the Parks Department to carry on the master plan that was developed a number of years ago. And actually, we have the honor to be part of that public process and actually design the park along with you and the community, along with the community. Is this on? Yes?
Hopefully, let me double check.
I'll just keep talking. Along with the community and neighbors to develop the master plan. And then we were also involved in the grant application as well. So we're very pleased that we were able to get funding from the state for this project. So currently we wanted to give you an update of where we're at, a little bit about the schedule and next steps for the park. So what you see in this plan right here is really pretty close to what we proposed during the master plan and the public process. Currently what we are showing is a small parking lot off of Myers Road. It has enough room for 25 parking spaces along with several handicap spaces as well. All of the Myers Road improvements are currently in, so those will be retained, and we'll both have two ways to get in the parking lot and circulate around. The other thing is that along both High School Road and Glen Oak Road, currently a lot of people just kind of park on the shoulder of that, particularly when they have events over at the high school. So we will be actually putting in a new curb and parallel parking for the entire extent of High School and Glen Oak Road 2, as well as new sidewalks, and then also stormwater planting similar to what you see along Myers Road. So all the rainwater, all the kind of surface runoff from the street will be captured along those stormwater swales. In terms of Myers Road and kind of entry into the park, what we're showing in this area right here is a seat wall, and then we're also going to have a plaque, kind of a stone kind of plinth plaque that is for Tyrone S. Woods himself. We've worked with the kind of local veterans group, along with, we've had a meeting with his mother as well. So there will be a memorial plaque and then a flagpole right beside that that will greet all visitors coming into the park. Some of the other park elements that we will have a new shelter here, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with both Wesley Lynn Park and then John Storm. It will be a little bit smaller than Wesley Lynn, a little bit bigger than John Storm Park. So you'll be able to definitely fit a number of picnic tables underneath there. It will be ample size for a variety of events. We also have the city's first fenced off-leash dog area. So that was something that many of the neighbors and community supported during the public process. So right now it's about 1 acre in size. So it's just typically like the minimum amount of size that we can have, but we were able to make that work with the park itself.
Just one question on that. I've heard from more than one person in the community interested in a fenced off-leash area. Will this be fenced?
Yes, it will. Yeah, we'll have a 4-foot-high chain link fence that will surround the park. So that will surround this area right in here. We also have a restroom, which is located right here. It will be able to accommodate 2 different stalls within that restroom. Right now, we don't know if we can afford it. We will put it out to bid, and if our bids come in really well and under what we would expect, then that will be part of the first phase. If we can't afford it, we will then have a concrete pad that will allow for portables to be put there during the summer months. So shelter, restroom. We also are showing picnic tables kind of throughout the park, as well as this kind of loop trail. So this is a fairly kind of flat area, so perfect area for frisbee throwing, pickup games, picnicking. It's not big enough for like a formal soccer field, and was never really intended to for that, but it will be available for passive use. These new pathways will kind of take you through the park. There's actually a number of really wonderful old oak trees on the site, some Doug fir trees. If you've been out there recently, we've been able to clear a lot of the blackberries, the old kind of filberts that were out there, so you can actually begin to kind of see what the park will ultimately be. So we'll be keeping those trees, and then in this area, and as part of the master plan, we're showing a new play area. And so we have some different kind of just kind of visuals to show you about what that ultimately will look like. There are some oak trees on both sides of the play area, so I think that'll be really nice to be able to have some shaded areas there, particularly during the summer months. This area down here is all existing wetland, so we will be planting new native plants within that area. This is the first phase of what we are thinking is probably 2 phases. Ultimately, there will be a boardwalk and trail system through this wetland area, along with interpretive signage. We can't afford that initially, but in the future, that will happen down in that area, as well as down in here. So you can see the dashed line. This is an existing city-owned a single-family home that is rented out. It will continue to be rented out for the time being, but ultimately we're hoping that this residence could potentially be converted to a kind of a meeting area, or maybe a partnership with the high school in terms of having classes down in this area right here. So this will be developed in the future. We're really excited about what is potentially happening in this area. We were always envisioning that as being more active. During the public process, we had a number of people come out that were advocates for pickleball. And so we are able to, right now as part of this phase, show 2 pickleball courts right in that area. And then we have a small skate park right here. As part of our design team, we have a skate park consultant, and we've been in touch with, actually it was someone that was really involved during the public process. There were a number of teens that showed up that were really advocates of the skate park. So we've got back in contact with him. He's going to get back in contact with the teens, and we're going to have a little work session one afternoon with younger kids, just to talk about what they want to see in that skate park. So for us, it's also about getting kids involved, making sure they have a vested interest. Yes.
I have a question about the location of your parking lot in the orientation. Mm-hmm. What's my, if I'm the first time visitor to the park, what's my wayfinding into the park? It seems like when I drive in, I'm going to see a grouping of trees and not really sure how I get into the central part of the park.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my mind here, was there ever any thought of flipping the memorial so that it actually became part of the entrance?
So it was closer over in
Yeah.
that area. You know, it's a really good question. We've had initial meeting with the city, and actually that parking lot location right now aligns with the entrance into the bus barn.
Okay.
And then also we have a traffic consultant because there is kind of a turn right in here. There's a certain setback that we need from the intersection. So this right here is almost really kind of locked in terms of where it can be along Myers Road. In fact, during the master plan, we actually showed it a little bit closer here, but we had to move it over here based on the city comments. I think our thought was that there's there maybe like about 30 feet or taller, really incredible pine trees right here that we wanted to keep, just beautiful specimens. So what we were actually kind of thinking is that we'll have signage here that will kind of announce the park entrance. And then to have this whole kind of entry right here, we felt was maybe a little bit more visible for pedestrians kind of walking along here with these trees in the backdrop. And that if we moved it over here, it might be just a little bit more hidden because of what you have out there in terms of existing trees. So at least that was kind of our kind of thinking. People that are parking here, you know, they're going to see the shelter, and so they're going to naturally kind of walk in that direction. So we thought about kind of what you mentioned and kind of came up with this option.
Question.
Yes.
Do I see one or two entrances to the parking lot there?
There's two entrances.
So two entrances?
Yeah.
Have you thought of, I know we've talked a lot about the dog portion in that location, but have you thought about other places in the park for it?
In terms of dog locations?
Yeah.
Well, we're right now, because of the kind of existing oak trees that we have here and the 1 acre in size, there were kind of limited areas that, and then we have also kind of the wetlands down here. We have this is Caulfield Creek, and so we have the Enrod setback. So it is kind of like a puzzle here in terms of where you can kind of put things. It seemed like this area here at the corner, you know, at kind of where the intersection with the cars would be more suitable for the dog park rather than something kind of internal.
And my concern with it there, it kind of along with Jeff's point too, is I have no problem with the fenced dog area, but they become very unsightly over time because there's no grass. It becomes dirt, becomes mud. And so as you drive by there, half of that side of High School Avenue is going to be dirt, a fenced dirt area. And that's what it looks like when you have your dogs running in there. And so it becomes unsightly. So I guess I wonder if putting it maybe center left in the back of the park, same size, everything, I have no issues with that, might be a better place for it, out of the line of sight of people. And then that would give us the ability, I understand the whole parking lot and that's fine, but maybe have more of a pedestrian entrance in that upper corner with the memorial maybe a little bit different, to Jeff's point, so it becomes a little more inviting for pedestrians. Because my concern is if I walk by as a pedestrian and I see a fenced dirt area, that doesn't look very inviting for me to go, well, let's go see what else is behind it, right? Just my thought.
That's actually an interesting point, because the location of the dog park with the two major intersections there, some dogs are going to get very happy about people walking by and cars walking by and things of that nature. I hadn't really thought about that before, but now that you pointed out, it really does seem to make more sense to have it more internal into the park, you know. And I think you're onto something there about flipping it more to the other side.
And maybe your circle there, maybe shift it up a little bit to make room for it and go above your setbacks.
And focus more on the memorial that way.
Yeah, because then because that's a major intersection. It'll become more major when Myers Road ends up going all the way through, right?
Yes.
So it'll become even more major than it is. The park will help that. The Myers Road extension will help that. And so when people are turning there, they're going to see a bus barn, they're going to see a high school, and they're going to see a fenced dirt area.
And
And just an open park would be, I think, kind of nice as well.
I'll say one of the things we talked about internally as staff was the kind of distancing the shelter space and the open lawn area from the corner of the park, knowing that there'll be two kind of, heavily used roads in the community. And so keeping the people, the active recreation areas away from the street. The street was one of the conversations we had internally. Also the location of the memorial with the flagpole. It leaves a sightline also from the open lawn area. And so one of the conversations we've had with VFW and with Tyrone's mother is, doing services or, ongoing. They do the annual 9/11 remembrance event. That this might be a location with how the park's lined up, with the sight lines into the open space, with the shelter there, with the flag, that it would be an ideal location for that. So having that, the shelter proximity to the parking as folks are loading, unloading, and then having again, the flagpole in the location where you can still see it prominently from both the main entrance into the park from that corner, as well as from the open lawn area.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that. I think the memorial, 5 degrees here, 5 degrees there, I think is fine. And I'm not in favor of taking down a couple of big pine trees just to increase a little bit of exposure for it. But to your point, Phil, I think we can still draw that circle into what is now the dog park and give up the backside and become the dog park and still accomplish the same thing.
Okay, and your input is noted. I believe he's still got quite a presentation to go. Can we let him continue?
Yeah, no, I appreciate all the comments. I think that we did want to touch a little bit more on the play area, and I think our thinking, though, too, just to maybe just kind of finish up on some things, is that the parking lot. And its location right here, I think we feel is set based on city standards, and that for it to really be more about this kind of large open space, we felt was important versus if we were to kind of switch these two items, these fir trees would need to be removed, and then that parking lot is really more focused on the dog area versus kind of an open lawn area. So let me talk a little bit about the play area. Because we do have some different options that we're considering. So the play area is right here, and
Got a magnet on there?
They're attracted to each other here.
at the same time. So,
There we go.
okay.
Sticky tape.
So we're really excited about this play area. When we went through the public process, there was really a strong desire to have it be kind of nature play based and kind of true to form. We've kind of carried that design through. However, there are some different ways that we can approach it. So what we're looking at right now, so this is the perimeter of the play area right in here. Existing oak tree. These are really large, nice kind of oak trees as well. We're looking at this kind of log scramble in this area, and these are all images of potentially what that could be. We haven't gotten into the detailing of it yet, but I think these images kind of convey potentially what it will be. It's using natural materials, ways for kids to get kind of elevated also using kind of logs kind of at the ground level. So really kids of all ages can participate and be active through this. There will be nets as well. There will be areas both flat and then also slightly inclined where kids can climb up to it, and all kind of intermixed within this kind of oak grove. And so the ground material will also be this kind of natural kind of bark fiber that we've used on other parks, really, throughout the area, including Oregon City as well. So that's what you see right in this area. What we wanted to maybe talk about is some potential options that could potentially happen in here. And we were at the Caulfield Neighborhood Association just on Tuesday and getting some of their input as well. One idea, and I have, let's see, I'll just kind of put this up here. So option one in this area, what you kind of see is this kind of stone scramble. When we did all that site clearing out there, actually we uncovered a lot of stones, a lot of kind of rock just on the surface. So the idea would be to use those and maybe bring some other in, that we have this kind of natural area, this kind of stone scramble that would be kind of within this area. So essentially coming off the pathways into this that you can kind of climb on, you can maneuver around on, sit on as kind of a gateway into this other kind of log scramble. The other option would be to begin to introduce some swings. And so what we're showing right here in option two are some tire swings. So we're showing 2 tire swings here. We're still keeping some of the stones that you saw in option one. And the other thing is that we're looking at maybe some more kind of vertical kind of wood kind of steppers. Maybe there's some other kind of brightly colored elements that kids can maneuver from one piece to the other. Then after talking with both Phil and John, we were thinking this might also be an opportunity, even though it's nature play based, is to do something that might be a little bit more inclusive at the entry areas. Certainly within here, we'll have platforms, we'll have areas that kids that are in wheelchairs can maneuver around, or they can lift themselves on. But would it be good to have something here that might be something like this, which is kind of a nest swing? So it actually has kind of a basket to it. So it allows kids that may have some mobility issues to really get on it and participate with other kids. The other thing was that here we could potentially have some kind of hand chimes, so kids can kind of hit those. They make kind of these melodic sounds to them, and so it would be another way for children of all kind of abilities to participate in. So that would happen here at the entry. What we heard from the neighbors was that there would be maybe a preference for something like this as part of this initial phase. So I think any sort of additional comments you might have on both the play area and the plan, we'd be very interested in hearing.
Doug?
When the skate park went in at Clackman Park, adjacent to it was there before, of course, was horseshoe rings. And there were behavioral problems at the skate park. And I think it affected the use of the area that was used by older people. Given I have no problem with skate park, don't misunderstand me, but given that we've got the high school located close by, it's probably going to be heavily used. And if we run into some of those behavioral problems, should some consideration be given to the pickleball area being a little bit more further away from the skateboard park? And it's just a question, but it's something to maybe think about.
Yeah. We do have, so as part of phase 2, we do have an additional half-court basketball that we'd be looking to install, and what we might, that's a good point, maybe flipping the uses, basketball court. I mean, although you still might have similar issues, might allow a little bit more separation between the users of the pickleball area.
I'll make a comment. I manage a park with a skate spot, and our skate spot is in the opposite corner of our youth playground, an accessible playground, and that was very specific because of the behaviors that can happen and different developmental stages, and activities that happen are not always conducive, and you mix parents with youth expressing themselves and verbally and physically in various ways, and it doesn't always mix. So in looking at this, the farther that skate spot can get from that playground, probably the less issues for the Parks Department in the long run. And then also looking at the skate spot in relation to the pickleball. The pickleball courts will become a skate spot. Our entire park has become a skate spot. So unless, and you can't put skate deterrents on every surface, but it seems like that's setting the pickleball up to fail, and pickleball folks are very passionate about their surface and their space, and that seems like a lot of headaches for the Parks Department as well.
Well, that's a great point. Yeah, as Phil mentioned, we do have some flexibility in terms of moving things around within that area, so that I think is definitely something we can consider.
So I'm assuming we're trying to do as much as we can with the money that we have for phase 1.
Yes.
But could the skate park be held for phase 2?
And put in the bathroom. Phase 1.
The part of the ongoing community engagement and the funding kind of spoke to a lot of the elements that you see in the current design. We did have the restroom listed as a portable with a slab, but we are adding that as an add alternate, hopefully, in order to be able to provide that for the phase 1 development. But we can look into trying to brainstorm on that a little bit.
Too sold those 3 elements are good neighbors.
Talking about the play structure of the...
And on the other part, I love your third option, but it'd be nice if you could put a couple of rocks in there too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I like option 1 because of the way the rocks are configured, but I love the idea of having, I guess, swings, whether it's the, what do you call it, the cradle swing or whatever versus the tire swing. I don't know that I'm partial one or the other, but I like the way this looks and the way it's laid out, but there's no swings. And so I think, to Karen's point, somehow put the rocks, and I have seen that huge pile of rocks you guys uncovered there. So and in 2 and 3, those aren't really being used. It'd be nice if they were used.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. That's good.
Bill?
I too work for Portland, had worked for Portland Parks, and I was involved with the skate park that was established here in Oregon City. And one of the paramount features of a skate park that I think makes a lot of sense is to have visibility of the park as a police officer's driving down the road. They will be more often apt to come in and be able to figure out if there is a problem without having to get out of their car to come in. But if it's a visible from the street, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I'll add a comment. Like, my first thought in looking at it is if it was on the corner of Myers and like that upper right-hand corner, what great visibility, because I know our skate spot is used 24 hours a day. It's amazing how many parties happen from midnight to 3 a.m. and how much graffiti and everything. So I'm with Bill, and I know our police go through constantly. The more eyes, like, it is so much quieter down, in that section, but Myers Road and the high school, and then with all those apartments up there, there'll be a lot more traffic. I almost wonder if it could be squeezed up there and then things reconfigured a little bit while saving trees.
Yeah.
Well, and along those lines too, the entrance, one of the entrances to the soccer fields across the street are down here by where you have your pickleball,
Yeah.
which means, and right now, that's where most of the cars are parked, although they do take pretty much the whole street. And so if you also have parking there that oftentimes will be used for kids playing with their parents, that's going to concentrate the parking for the entrance as well as the pickleball or the play structure, even that entrance. So to that point, if we could move that to the upper corner, we kind of spread out the need for the parking a little bit.
Yeah.
And then my question with the parking too is we look at parallel parking and we looked at nose-in parking right there, all the way along that street. I know that takes up more space, but we get a lot more cars in there.
Yeah, I think just from the city standards and working with the engineering department, they have asked us to put parallel parking. We haven't talked to them about angled in parking at this point. Yeah.
I think angle would be a good option because right now one soccer game fills that whole street up with parallel parking.
Yeah.
And then you add a park there, which is going to bring more people, and it doesn't really solve, it makes it nicer with the drainage and the sidewalks, but doesn't really add anything.
Yeah.
Do they utilize the bus barn parking?
They can, they will after that's full.
Right, but currently it's not.
Currently not, and the earlier games that start at 4 o'clock, you get visiting teams, they don't know they can park there, because that's usually an after hours parking.
Right.
And so they don't typically know, and so they end up parking at the high school and walking down or along the street, but half of that's taken up from the condos along, that don't have enough parking, they park on that street. So parking's a big problem there for that reason. But maybe we could do something with the small parking lot, some signage for a co-op that allows for parking across the street at the bus barn, I don't know, after certain hours or whatever the rules might be, but.
Yeah, I think part of the agreement with the city, with the school district, was the after-hours parking availability for the bus barn area. And we've had conversations between the city parks department and representatives from the school district, and they're comfortable with folks using it after hours.
Because I can promise you, they will be using the parking lot for those soccer games.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's closer than what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
Just by opening that up, that will be full, and it won't be for park users a lot of times.
Yeah, and we'll have dedicated parking all along high school. We'll also have parking on Glen Oak, which really isn't really there right now. But it'll be, noticeable that it's for parking. But yeah, that's a good point. I know that in some conversations that I've had, and I don't know that we've ever brought it up in this format specifically with the angled parking, is that they really don't like to have cars backing out onto a busy road from an angled parking spot. And so I doubt that the transportation would be comfortable with angled parking on that area.
And you'd probably have to give up some park property in order to fit it in, because that's a standard
And we already
street
are, as it is, to build out the full build out.
What about parking on both sides of that street? Because right now you can't. Is that an option to just at least make it so that we can have parking on both sides?
Not at this time.
We would have to, I think we would have to further encroach into a park if that was something that the engineering department would allow.
Well, and because there's almost enough now, I wonder how much you'd have to encroach. If it's 3, 4, 5 feet, maybe that's not a big deal. Because there's almost enough for that now, just not quite.
I think at this point, at least from a staff perspective, I'd be hesitant to further diminish the footprint of the park for parking for the school district. If they have additional parking needs, utilizing the current parking lot, it hasn't been a conversation we've had to date, but I know that one of the other things that they've looked at is the high school avenue is, our high school road in that area, I think, is actually expected to, if and when the school district ever builds out in where the soccer fields currently are located, to expand into that footprint.
Into the soccer fields?
Parking. Yeah, if it gets built out for another purpose.
Okay. So any more? Anything else you need from us?
I do have one other, based on my experience with skate parks, and I used to quote-unquote manage a skate park over on Powell Boulevard at Benedict Park. It's a large one. It might be the largest. Well, maybe not the largest, but anyway, it's right next to Powell Boulevard.
Yeah, yeah.
And it took a few years for the funding to come through because it was never installed originally. But wire or bollards put in there, because if you're putting the skate parks next to the road, which is how it is with that Benedict Park, it has saved a lot of problems by hitting those 3-strand cable wires into the park. If in fact that's what you end up doing, is putting it close enough to the park where the police can see in. As a suggestion.
Yeah, no,
as part of the design.
Yeah.
Is there, and remind me with that, Kurt, so there is currently an elevation change currently in that area where it's a little bit sunken. Is that?
It's not very much. It's only a couple feet, and it meets the sidewalk over here, but then it slightly dips down right in that area. Yeah.
Doug?
It's a suggestion to, since you're going to develop that wetland there, to perhaps, as the plans get a little further on, to go before the Natural Resource Committee of the city, if you would.
Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah, we had the wetland delineated a number of years ago. The NROD boundary has expanded based on that. And of course, we have that boundary around Caulfield Creek as well.
Question. Have you been out to see, or are you familiar with the newest play structure out at Oxbow Park?
I've seen photos of it, but
it's a similar idea with using natural obstacles, I guess you could say. But one thing that they've put in there is they've done some, I don't want you to call it a structure, which includes some water and some hands-on play for the younger kids that kind of implement some STEM ideas into the play structure. I was just wondering if you guys have thought about that. It doesn't really add much as far as space, but it's kind of a nice little thing off in the corner. The kids are, it's the deal where it's kind of like the old game. You put the marble at the top and it follows the wires down, but they do it with wood and different things. I think that would be kind of a nice something of that nature.
And does that involve water or?
It does. There's some running water there, which I know is potentially a challenge. But it's more of a drip. It's not anything that's a lot of water and a big mess, but just enough of a drip that kind of makes everything flow. And then they recycle that water within itself.
Okay. Yeah.
So it doesn't take a lot, but there is some, Yeah.
I know from an operational standpoint, water and sand are very difficult to maintain. And so that's been, as we design parks, that's been kind of a lens that we've used in order to be able to provide the biggest bang for the buck as far as operational expenses for staffing. So that is very popular. I know that the Westmoreland Park in Portland is extremely popular, has sand and water features. And speaking with staff that operate that facility, there's a lot of challenges that go along with that. So very high maintenance, but it's something that we've heard a lot of feedback just generally from folks that are interested in those features. So
and water may not be the answer. I just know that's what they've done, but something along the lines of STEM. I know up there they've also they've buried a rowboat. And kids climbing. That's not it's surface, so it's not anything real high, but gives them the ability to kind of learn and play at the same time. And I think just anything like that. Maybe water's not the answer, but something along those lines is always nice. They have rock climbing holds along the wood structures. Just take an existing wood structure like this and then adding the holds gives it just another element.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think kind of diversity of experiences. Yeah, no, I think
so. It's not just, so it kind of spreads out your age group that might be using it. You might have some adults on that structure with some rock climbing holds, but
that's a good comment. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. And just for schedule wise, so we're right in the middle of construction documents. We'll be bidding it out early next year. So construction will happen all throughout the summer months with a fall grand opening.
Yep. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thanks, Kurt.
Okay. So on with the agenda. Staff, homeless impacts on parks. That ought to be interesting.
And I'm going to lower the projector for us.
the only one that doesn't have a monitor.
I'll lower that so that John can see.
It's all for him.
There we go. So I know that we had a request to discuss this as a group in PrAC. We had a similar conversation with the City Commission at the commission meeting about a week ago, and wanted to bring the conversation to this group. If you saw the presentation, it'd be a little bit of another conversation around that, but hopefully, we invited Jonathan to come and speak to the park-specific impacts. And we have a couple of slides that are related to the Oregon City Police Department. We used the same slides that they provided, so I can't go into specific detail on the police department slides, but I thought they were relevant and would be of interest to this group. So going through... There we go. So the first thing I want to talk about is the homeless point-in-time counts. And so every 2 years, the county does a count of the homeless population, and they do it county-wide. The last population count was in 2017, and the most recent one in 2019, towards the beginning of the year. So what you'll notice is there's overall been an increase in the homeless in the region, but it has not been an increase across the board for all of the areas. So Oregon City has seen an increase from around 200 to around 300 homeless that are in the Oregon City area, and many of the other areas actually have seen a decrease from 2017 to 2019. I don't want to infer anything from that specifically, but one of the things that Chief Band discussed during this conversation is that it's a little troubling that typically when you look at statistics, I think he specifically said that there's never been a time where Oregon City is typically so far outpacing Clackamas as a whole in a specific statistical category. And so it's a little troubling looking at the homeless population in Oregon City and the increase that we've seen comparative to the other regions. So fairly substantial decreases in Milwaukee, Molalla, Clackamas, and a fairly substantial increase in Oregon City. The numbers of total homeless, when you're looking at Happy Valley, Wilsonville, Gladstone, Canby, are fairly minimal, all below 50. But when you look at all the other regions combined, fairly substantial increase for Oregon City. Homeless crime reports. So this is January of 19 through the end of June of 19. Homeless crimes make up approximately 7% of the overall. We had 1,632 total offenses or incident reports that were filed. Looking at the locations, you can kind of tell that they're kind of central to the downtown hub, kind of along the riverfront, and then up and down Molalla is kind of that area. The top 10 reported locations by numbers, you'll see John Storm Park on there, Atkinson Park. We see quite a bit at Clackamas as well when you look at previous years. Some of the most common offenses that we're seeing, a lot of theft, criminal trespass, methamphetamine possession, some of the more serious offenses, strangulation, rape, robbery, menacing with a weapon. So as far as homeless arrest locations, we've had 827 total arrests for the time period. So 28% involve homeless suspects. And you see kind of the areas again where they're centrally located. So you see a lot around the transit center, a lot in that kind of central hub of downtown along the riverfront, and then you see them at some of the more centralized locations that, at the hospital, the Safeway, some local restaurants, as well as Jones-Storm Park. Some of the more common arrests, again, warrants. So you see a lot of folks, as Chief Band will tell you, that get warrants either locally or in other jurisdictions. They don't show up. They then have to have a warrant out, and then they are contacted by PD for whatever is happening. They'll notice that they have a warrant out, and so they will arrest at that time. So homeless camp removed, these are numbers specific to code enforcement. So these don't include camps that are cleaned up by our park staff. So if it is a camp that is an active camp, typically that's handled by our code enforcement office. If it is a lot of times we have abandoned camps that our park staff clean up that are not included in these statistics. But you can see the ramp up. One of the things, again, one of the things that Chief Band pointed out was maybe not a correlation, but what we've seen since we've had additional service providers in the area. So not to necessarily call out specific service providers, but you've seen that ramp up of additional homeless camps that we have had to clean up over the last couple of years. They're anticipating this year that we'll have over 100 homeless camp cleanups this year compared to previous, 92 was the high last year. So we wanted to focus on the homeless impacts, and with that, in order to prepare myself for the City Commission meeting, for this meeting, I conducted interviews with our staff, our park staff, to get a better sense of, what are the impacts on them? How is the homeless situation in our park system impacting their daily work, and how they're able to provide services for residents in our city? And so you'll notice through a couple of the slides some quotations. These are quotes that we've received from staff in relation to their daily work. And so we have some photos that we'll go through. This is just a snapshot of some of the incidences that we deal with, and Jonathan's here, can speak probably a little bit more robustly on the true impacts, but a lot of things that we had not dealt with 5-10 years ago that we're really seeing heavy impacts in our daily work. And it's a little bit more of an opportunity cost for our staff. So instead of, this quote specifically, you used to spend a half an hour picking up Jones-Storm and Sportcraft. Now I spend 2 hours a day. So that extra, hour and a half, what is the opportunity lost there where they could be maintaining planting beds, doing trim work, doing overseeding or fertilization of areas where now a lot of it is spent on cleaning up after homeless individuals in our park system. So the photos you see here, and again, we try to identify the park locations to give a little bit more clarity. Old Kenema Park, the Clackamas River Trail. We do have many photos, and we tried to, it's not pretty, a lot of the work that the staff have to do in our park system, but a lot of human waste that is picked up, both in the camps as well as folks that are misusing our restroom facilities or around our restroom facilities. Each homeless person is different. It's not one homogenous group of individuals, but we have folks that are out there that are dealing with addiction. We have folks that are out there that just enjoy living outdoors. We have folks that are out there that can't go to a homeless shelter because they won't accept folks that have animals, or if you are on drugs, they won't take you in. And so we deal with mental illness a lot in our system. And so with that, we see a variety of different uses and misuses of our park system. This is, again, just a snapshot of some of the things that we see. The bikes that are there, folks that are chopping up bikes and using them for different things. The need the human need to use the restroom. So when folks are out living in a park, they do obviously misuse that space, and it's not a nice situation for both our staff as well as the park users when we have to deal with that on a regular basis. A couple more photos. We have John Storm Park, again, is heavily used by our homeless population. McLaughlin Promenade, we see a lot of use and misuse there as well. And it touches probably a solid half, maybe, of our park system, I would say, as far as homeless impacts. So it's not, although it's central to Clackamas, River Access, John Storm Park, the Promenade, we see homeless impacts at Rivercrest. We see them at Singer Creek Park, Atkinson Park. So it's end of the Oregon Trail property. So it's that a lot of our park system is impacted by homeless use. The quote here, so homeless people will bring bikes and shopping carts into our restrooms. I need to wait for them to leave before I can clean up. Sometimes they won't come out, and we need to call police to clear them out before I can do my job. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is just, it's not like a staff person can show up and just get to work. It's showing up and then having to interact and maneuver and negotiate with a homeless person in order to get an area clean. John Storm Park is a perfect example of, when you look at the structure of the park, it's a beautiful park, well designed, gets heavy use particularly during certain seasons. Has a shelter, which doesn't get rented out as much as we would like to see it rented out. But we have, John can maybe speak to like some of the school groups that come through and use it during the season.
Yeah, so we actually have a program where I believe it's 6th grade kids will come. A gentleman has a boat that's shaped like a canoe, but has a motor, and the kids will motor up and down the Willamette River, getting to go up to the falls. It's a nice, neat program. Our staff has to, every day that he is there in the springtime, our staff have to immediately, as soon as starting work, head down to John Storm, because if we don't have a staff member there, most oftentimes the kids are coming to the restrooms, and this is what they're experiencing. So if not, a lot worse of things. That's just one example at John Storm Park, though.
Yeah, so they'll use the facilities for the cleaning stations. So you'll have staff that'll enter a restroom, and you'll have a either half naked or possibly naked individual that's utilizing the sink as a wash station. They like to use the space particularly, just as a shelter, honestly, as well. And so you can imagine as, a parent bringing a small child into a restroom, or possibly even a child entering a restroom unattended, entering into a situation like that is troubling. And so, the staff do an excellent job of trying to mitigate those issues so that the general public doesn't see it as often as they might see it otherwise. And even after we have staff that go through and clean a restroom, we'll have issues there shortly after where we'll get complaints about, the restrooms were trashed, and, it was, unacceptable, and like, well, we just had staff there an hour ago, and I do apologize, but, it's something we deal with regularly. This is Old Kenema Park. So this was a camp that park staff cleaned up. It took 4 staff members probably 2.5 hours to clean up this area.
2 trucks full.
Yeah. And so this is, just the degradation of the natural environment, the amount of staff time at Old Kenema. This is also in an area that's not super easily accessible for staff, and so trying to get all of that debris out to an area where we can put it in the back of a rig It takes a lot of time and a lot of resources.
This particular site had vomit, hypodermic needles, used tampons, you name it, we're experiencing it.
So one of the other things that we deal with, and we just dealt with at the overflow parking lot at Clackamas Park, is RVs and people living in their cars. You know, we have empathy for folks that are really, you know, again, it's a wide range. You have folks that are really down on their luck and just looking for somewhere to stay that's safe. And you have folks that are really abusing the system and abusing areas. You know, can be excessive trash around vehicles. They obviously, again, have to use the restroom somewhere. And so oftentimes they'll step just outside their RV or their car and they'll use the restroom fairly close to where they're at. Even in areas like John Storm Park, where we have the Arta Potty right across the street and we have the restroom facility that's right there, we have folks that, you know, the car that's parked here is parked at John Storm Park. They'll still use the restroom right in the parking lot. And so it's, you know, it's an ongoing, you know, cleanliness issue, ongoing just cleanup needs for our staff. I'll let John speak to this one, the transient boat.
Yeah, it's just, we were just trying to show that, you know, it's a wide range. So yes, we have people in our parks camped in the bushes, the ODOT properties, the canyons, the urban renewal properties. So there's a wide variety of it, but this was a particular situation. It varies from year to year, but the John Storm dock is a 72-hour tie-up, and this individual would continuously, I mean, he was there for weeks and weeks on end. We have to work with the sheriff's department and the Marine Patrol, and then they try to catch up with him, enforce our posting of the 72 hours. A lot of times when individuals like this show up, we end up having problems with our equipment. Things get jammed down into the pump out dump station, causing clogs, causing, you know, so we end up spending a lot more time down on the dock, having to clean the dock, and then working with the sheriff's department. So that's where I just wanted to show that it's not just only on land, but also on our docks. We continue to deal with it. I just seen that they had a news article about how they were removing some of the derelict boats. Actually, unfortunately, this individual ended up dying on this boat, and it was just anchored off of John Storm. It started listing. That's when the sheriff's office did a welfare check, found the individual. They contacted his next of kin, at which point this boat sat on our dock for a month until the next of kin could respond and remove the boat from our dock. So just impacts it. And then, of course, while it sat there, there's no one in it. Everyone else started messing around with it, living on it. You know, it became an ongoing thing. So, but the rafts, the trash, and then the misuse of the dock, so it's ongoing down there.
So this was a quote from one of our admin staff that I thought was very well written, and thought that I would include, so I'll read out loud. I was around when our staff knew all names and faces of less than a half dozen homeless in the community. I now see the stark contrast and evolution of the crew morale, new job duties and daily tasks, and daily frustration about not being able to have a nice, clean, well-maintained park that they can take pride and ownership in. I know there is no easy solution or fix for this problem. I don't see the excessive garbage and general disregard for the parks changing. I feel for our staff having to deal with monotonous daily tasks of cleaning up poop, drug paraphernalia, repairing unnecessarily damaged and broken things in parks, and dealing with homeless camps. So, somebody who's been with our system for some years and really saw the change that we've seen in our community over the last handful of years. And, the crew is unbelievable. I mean, they are very, very hardworking, take a lot of pride in the work that they do, and they would much rather be doing, the fun project-based work, doing more things that the general public would be excited about, versus the excessive cleanup. One of the even small things that is really frustrating for the crews is that the homeless will go in and take garbage bags out of their receptacles, and if there's garbage in it, they'll dump it out wherever, and they'll take the bag with them. And so staff have to go out and handpick all of the garbage they dumped out in the park. They'll have to clean out the cans that are in there that other people have thrown now garbage into, and then they have to replace the bags, and it's something that happens regularly. And it's, if it were to happen every once in a while, wouldn't necessarily be a big thing, but when it's happening so regularly, it's really a drain on morale and the work that they're doing in the field. Is there anything else, John, that you wanted to kind of speak to, or?
Yeah, I always, that comment's interesting because when Phil was showing the statistics of us now being, we are above 300 plus. When I started working for the city, I remember 4 or 5 people. So 10 years ago, we had 4 to 5 homeless individuals within our city. So somehow at some point, it jumped exponentially. If we could say that it was just down along the waterfront and that's where our greatest impacts were, that'd be one thing. But to Phil's point, talking about at John Storm, we had the exact same experience with a naked individual. Kids' field trip to the end of the Oregon Trail. Our staff member asked him to put clothes on, and he got flipped off and told where he could go. It's really, really hard on the staff. The garbage bag thing is one that it's a weekly basis. And when you get to a garbage can, the garbage bag has now been removed. You would have been able to take a garbage bag, tie it up, get it disposed of. You now have a garbage can that you get to take a garbage bag, scrape everything out of, and then having to clean the bags. We'd also seen and heard that, we were seeing an increase in rodents, rats. For us too, the fecal contamination, we actually had to bring in a company because we got to a spot where there was so much feces that we weren't basically, we don't mind cleaning up spots, but this was so extensive that we actually had to get companies in, jugs of urine, all that other kind of good stuff. But the hypodermic needles, we're finding a lot of those. They seem to try to tuck them away or throw them away, flush them down the toilets. If you can imagine it, our staff is dealing with it. And yes, our staff is very, very good about it. They're very passionate about wanting to keep the parks safe and clean. We want people to be able to go to the parks and use them for the reason that they're there. These aren't the reasons that our parks are there. So, yeah.
I'd be happy to answer questions if you have them, or discussions group.
First off, thank you. I feel your pain. In working with Portland, I deal with this on a daily basis, and our crews do. And it's so funny to hear about that plastic bag issue because it is a huge, we've had people, casual staff quit because of having to pick up every day. It's amazing how time consuming.
And we'll give them a bag if they want one,
exactly.
If you want a bag, let us know.
Here you go. But you're not there all day to do it. But question is, in terms of staff safety, have you had incidents of of your staff being assaulted or feeling threatened or being in a position of, of being cornered or attacked?
Sure. Mostly our seasonal staff.
Yeah.
Just because they don't have the experience. Full-time staff who've been around it enough, obviously they don't enjoy dealing with it. They know to step back, step away, contact the police and let them respond. And we work very closely with Mike Day, but man, are his hands full.
Yeah, some of the incidences that I heard about, well, that I've known, but they brought up as well as we were doing the interviews with staff. We had an individual that was pushed over while blowing one of the parks. So a heavy pack on and pushed over from behind by a homeless individual. We've had a staff person that had to step in with a mom and a small child that were being accosted by a homeless individual in a park and make sure they were escorted to an area where they felt safe. So yeah, it happens.
What solutions has Oregon City Police provided in terms of supporting the Parks Department in this issue, and is the city as a whole looking at providing the Parks Department more funding for this? Because I know how expensive and how much staff time this is, and just your garbage rates as well. Like, I can only imagine how much
Toilet paper rolls.
Oh, yeah.
We had just filled every single toilet paper roll on Monday. By Tuesday, there wasn't a stitch of toilet paper.
Yep. So, and does police have any solutions, and is council, or is the city looking at providing additional supports? Because this is more than a park bureau, a city parks department issue.
I will say during the last budget cycle, they did allocate an additional staff position, not necessarily tied specifically to homelessness, but just knowing that we are deficient in staff on the park side, and so we do have an additional staff position. Mike Day has been a big help with the homeless in our park system and being able to find resources for those that are looking for resources. And I know that John works very closely with some of the individuals in our code enforcement as we're looking to, tag and clean up parks. The overflow parking area at Clackamas, we met on site with one of the captains and talked about, opportunities and solutions for taking care of that. And the next day, so that day, they notified every individual that was on site. The next morning, in coordination with park staff, they got the entire parking lot cleared. We buttoned it up and closed it for the season. So yeah, I would say PD is definitely a help. They're also, there's no magic bullet for dealing with homeless, and each homeless situation is different, and they're open to assisting us or helping us in any way that they can. They just, they need to balance workload and the other issues they're seeing in the community as well. So as they have resources available, they have been helpful for park staff.
Do we have a staff person that's involved with the Homeless Coalition?
I've attended some of the Homeless Coalition meetings. PD as well has attended some of the Homeless Coalition meetings. And we keep up to date with their communications, and so kind of keep tabs on where they're at. It's been probably a good couple of months since I've attended one of their meetings, but we do keep abreast of what they're working on.
Are the problems more after hours or during the day, or does it matter?
All day long.
All day long.
So do you have so we saw the bar graphs of the amount of homeless in each of our communities in our area.
Yeah.
And of course, Oregon City is a large area, so I'm assuming that maybe that's one of the reasons why we have more numbers. Is there another reason that the police chief sees as a reason for that kind of, that's a huge difference. Is it because we have so many more shall we say, passive recreational sites that have a lot of greenery that allow, like what Springwater Corridor does for Portland? It's the same kind of a problem for them because there's not as many opportunities to find these people because there's so many places where they can live.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of Chief Band or the police department. I will say that, again, good, bad, or indifferent, having resources available in our community does, to a certain extent, keep people in the area. And so, the correlation between when services have been available and our spike in homeless, and then the dip in homeless regionally, but the spike in homelessness within Oregon City is something to keep an eye on. And again, services need to be provided, but they're currently not being provided necessarily in the county at the same levels as they're being provided in Oregon City. And so I know that he's looking for more of a regional solution as opposed to an Oregon City solution. And that's something that we would definitely support on behalf of the Parks Department.
Doug?
It's not only our size, with the exception of your slide there, with the exception of unincorporated Clackamas County, we were the only one showing an increase.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 50% increase.
Exactly.
My recollection is they can sleep in the parks, they can be there for a certain period, but have to be out of there. What are those hours?
So unless we are not allowing anybody to take a nap, so if my grandma wanted to take a nap on a bench in a park, we would have to treat them the same way as a homeless individual in the park. So they can be in the park during operational hours, so 10 up until 10 p.m. The park's open at 5 in the morning, but they cannot be in the park after hours. And the police department's working on some additional solutions for trying to get housing to individuals that are in our park system or moving them along. And so the Boise court ruling that happened recently was something that kind of shook how we enforced camping in our system. And so basically the ruling was that unless there was a place for every homeless person to be bedded at night, that you could not preclude somebody from sleeping on public property. And so that kind of stopped a lot of enforcement regionally. And what the current interpretation by police, and again, I don't want to speak as though speaking as a parks person, my understanding of the police current approach is that, working on finding resources for individuals in regionally. And so being able to find a bed for the night or a few nights for individuals that are looking for those resources. If they refuse at that point, then they need to move along. But, trying to find additional solutions.
A question about the slides. And this is probably a police question. I thought one of the slides indicated 7% of the crimes were associated with homeless people. Mm-hmm. And there was another slide that says 23% of the arrests are of homeless people. Is that just essentially kind of a vagrancy issue?
Yeah, so I think that was crime report location. So crime reports versus arrests. And so 28% of the arrests involve homeless suspects, and 7% of the crime reports involve homeless.
And how many were repetitive offenses? I know in Portland, like in our parks, it's the same offenders over and over again. Though there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds every day. But.
Yeah, and I would imagine that would be the same, is that you have folks out there that are really just trying to just get by, and then you have individuals that are dealing with, severe either mental or addiction issues, and they're the ones that you see quite regularly.
Okay, so, gracious. I'm not doing that. This has been wonderful information. Thank you. But we're not going to solve this here tonight, and we do have other agenda items. Mm-hmm. So I know Denise's report every month, I'm just appalled at what staff has to put up with and take care of on a daily basis when we already know we're shorthanded.
Yeah.
But also, since I know we're paying Jonathan to be here, and you asked to move, oh, we're not. You asked to move.
We're not hourly, so.
Oh, salary. We can't give him a break.
I've been here since 6:30.
Yeah, okay, yeah, on behalf of Jonathan, since you did want to move up an item on trees in city parks.
Well, I've still got some questions on this issue. Regardless of time, I think we need to address them. So if I may, as I'm hearing this, I'm just sitting here nodding and I'm feeling for what your employees are going through. I mean, we hear that it has quote unquote impact on our resources, but sometimes that's the extent of it. It didn't dawn on me that you fill the toilet paper Monday and Tuesday it's empty. Like, it makes sense.
It's like a slap in the face.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I'm not arguing at all. I didn't realize it was that detailed. Like, I've just never processed it that way. My question is, are we losing any employees? Have we lost any employees because of this, let's say, change in job description?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that anyone has specifically on the way out the door said, if it weren't for the homeless situation that we had to deal with, but we have a high turnover rate.
Factor.
Mm-hmm.
We have a high turnover rate.
And you've seen that increase over the last, let's say, year or two that may correlate with the increase of homelessness, potentially. Not trying to draw those conclusions, but I mean, they correlate.
I mean, we actually have a seasonal staff member who's experienced several things that he didn't even know how to deal with. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just mind-boggling that someone could do that. And John, I don't know what to do. It's horrible, We had it right before one of the concerts in the park. We had a situation, and everyone else's resolution was to just shut the restroom down, and the parks department will deal with it in the morning. So our seasonal staff member who responded, he just couldn't believe it. He was in shock.
Right. Wow.
I had a question, two things in City of Portland, Portland Parks. Nothing unusual. We're just about 10 years ago, it was the same thing. One thing that helped, and I've talked to you before, there has to be a way to get alternative community service people to help. City of Portland had, the crew leaders were county employees. And they had the ability to, if people weren't performing accordingly, they had the ability to supervise and punish them so that worked on what the City of Portland did. We just brought the utensils out there, the equipment, and yes, they can't do it every day in every park, but that amount of time that it took for 2 or 3 people to pick up a park where ACS could do it in an hour, move to the next location. A lot of those people want to be out of jail, even though it's not a kind of a thing that they would look forward to. They want to be out as opposed to inside. That worked for the City of Portland. We're doing the same things over every day. And in Southeast Portland, where I last had my tour of duty, we were having difficulty getting seasonals to work there because they knew that that's what they'd be facing every day. So I really strongly recommend somehow getting funding, having the county help us, since they are right in our city, to do a daily assignment. And the other thing I also thought helped with restrooms is the loos, the Portland loos. You can't get comfortable in them, and the police can see in there if somebody's sleeping in there. They just drive by and they see that either he's passed out, he's dead, or he's sleeping, and so they can't prevent anybody else from coming in because there's just not. It's even tough to get a shopping cart inside of it. So they can still do some vandalism, but basically they're stainless steel. They're built like a jail cell. And they're expensive, but that's nothing compared to dealing with a brick and mortar and doing what you're doing every day, especially with the graffiti. And these are stainless steel. They can't paint it. Or if they do paint it, you can take it off in seconds. So I somehow that funding has to go toward I don't know about all the new parks, but all the parks. And as I was leaving, they didn't put a brick and mortar in. They've used the Portland Loo. And you may have to wait in line to use it, because there's just one stall inside that loo, but you waited in line and the person done their business and they're gone, because it's nothing that you want to sit in very long because of the ability to see underneath. It's about 3 feet off the ground, 2 feet off the ground. So that was my.
They sit in them now. They figured out a way.
So that was to keep your feet up.
Since you've retired, things have changed.
Yeah. I think that the police department did provide the Arta potties to try to address some of the fecal contamination and those issues that folks were running into. But honestly, that's where we get a lot of our information from, is from the walkers, the public. They're the ones experiencing this, and then we'll be on site, and then they contact us letting us know. We're just kind of that relay to the police, but we try to find it before it impacts the public, but it's just can't always happen that way.
I'll make one last comment, because I know we could talk forever on this, but NRPA, National Recreation Parks Association, they have a monthly homelessness in parks conversation, a phone call. I've been on it off and on over the months, and it's people all over the nation, parks professionals. It is really enlightening, and it's fascinating. Not all the programs all the cities can do is possible, because every city is different, but that may be something, a call you want to get on, and I can send Phil the link, because this happens in the smallest of cities and the biggest of cities. Everyone's battling the exact same stuff. Some places have come up with little solutions or partnerships.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, trees?
Trees. So we have a couple different items that we wanted to chat about tonight in regards to trees in Oregon City parks. As some of you might have seen recently, we removed a couple of trees at the Oregon City pool.
Not too popular.
Which obviously we got a lot of concerned citizens, and the city commission was not very happy with our approach. So we did remove a oak tree. I have the, I think I have the presentation. This is the worst touchscreen ever. There we go. So we removed 2 trees from Oregon City pool. We had an oak tree and a walnut. They were both removed on August 29th. The white oak, so it had major limb death, infestation. It had a decaying area of the trunk. You can see the sparseness of the leaves. It was definitely on the downward side. We actually had the arborist come out originally and looked at the tree, and then did a, so that was in the fall of 2018, and said that it was on its downward life cycle. We should probably continue to monitor the tree to make sure that, at the time they said it was a hazard tree and was, possible for limb drop and things like that. They came back in summer and were looking at the walnut, and came over to look at the oak again, and sent a very specific email. You need to mitigate this immediately. You want to take care of this right away. And so we, took heed, blocked it off, and scheduled the time for the tree to come down so that it would not fall on either the community room space, which it's directly adjacent to, or possibly on children or individuals using the open lawn area. The black walnut, we did have an individual trip and fall on the sidewalk at the end of June of 2019, which started a conversation around, fixing the sidewalk and doing repair work. We had, as part of the protocol for removing trees, we had an arborist come out and do an evaluation of the tree. They did note that it was in good condition, but it is directly adjacent to the sidewalk. We had root upheaval, tripping hazard, and root cutting for the sidewalk repair would most likely be necessary. If that was necessary, the arborist report said that there was a good chance that the tree would need to be removed anyway, but offered some additional mitigation that could happen in order to try to save the tree if that's the direction we went in. So we did remove both those trees on August 29th of this year. We do have some next steps for mitigation. We're replanting a minimum of 4 trees along the planting strip. We're hopefully going to be planting 5 trees right along 13th Street. We're also going to be replanting 3 trees in the green space above the sidewalk. The open lawn area in that space, we have on our CIP list an expansion of the pool at some point, and so we don't want to put the trees too close to the current community room space, as we most likely would have to remove trees in order to expand the facility. And so we're putting them as close to kind of the upper plateau of the lawn area before it slopes down onto 13th Street. We will then also be doing sidewalk repairs along 13th Street, along the whole side of 13th. So those are our next steps for that. With the feedback we received from the City Commission and individuals, both at the neighborhood association meetings as well as through public comment and the numerous phone calls that I've received since then, we're looking at ways that we can better approach that were more in line with community expectations around how we deal with trees in our parks. And so looking at kind of how we approach with procedures in parks when we have tree-related issues, what type of community engagement we do, if there is a need to do new code to kind of more closely specify what that approach looks like. So we'll be kind of going through that process and in the future to kind of determine what that best approach is. I asked Jonathan to stick around for this topic because, internally we talk about trees a lot. And John deals with trees a lot. We obviously, we're the largest.
Just so that everybody knows, we do love trees.
Yeah.
We do.
So we're the largest land owner and maintain the largest land within the city. Metro obviously is close by, but they aren't actually in city boundaries. So we do maintain a lot of trees, many trees in our system. And I'll say that with that, we often have to make decisions on how we approach trees that are having issues in our system. So, we've had a couple of years back, quite a few trees that were removed, I guess, from Clackamas Park. That was prior to my time. I know that there was some community concerns around removal of the trees there. We have a tree that is half dead currently, that's just over the RV dump station at Clackamas Park and has dropped some substantial limbs.
On an RV?
We've had a couple of trees in other areas that have dropped on fences or dropped on a shed on a nearby house.
Had an individual fall at Clackamas Park due to a trip hazard from a cottonwood root. Ended up with 30 stitches.
Yeah. And so it's, as much as, like John said, we love trees, nobody gets into the park's business and doesn't appreciate nature. I worked for probably 5 years for Friends of Trees on my weekends, personal time, volunteering to plant trees in neighborhoods around Portland. It's something that we appreciate in our system. But sometimes we need to remove trees and sometimes we need to mitigate their impacts in other areas. And so we balance both the value of the tree and the safety and liability concerns and the resources that we have available to deal with tree-related issues in relation to the value of the tree as well. And so looking at, obviously, reapproaching the tree removal probably at the pool, but as we move forward, we're still going to have to remove trees from time to time. There's going to be dead trees in our system. We have retrained staff to make sure that we are going through, one of the concerns that folks had was that we didn't pull permits before removing the trees at the pool. We've retrained staff. We will always get a permit now before moving forward. We have retrained and received signatures from staff identifying that they understand that that is part of the process. We are in compliance with the removals and have been in compliance with the removals. It was, again, a decision that was made with the information that we had at the time. So moving forward, though, we want to make sure that we are transparent as possible, that hopefully the process that moves forward is a process that the community can be comfortable with, but also that doesn't hamstring staff as far as staff time and resources to manage the process. And so trying to find a streamlined approach that works both for the community as well as for the resources that we have available to maintain our trees. We have speaking to a couple of trees that we're dealing with that are either dead or dying. We also have a couple of very substantial trees at our library that are showing signs of Dutch elm disease. And so knowing how much community members appreciate the tree canopy there, it's going to be a very sensitive subject. And Jonathan's done quite a bit of research and reached out to different companies to try to determine a best plan of approach. I don't know if there's anything additional that you want to add to.
No, I think there will be more information soon that will be available in regards to that. But yeah, one of the elm trees most likely is going to be lost. One of the other trees is flagging. I kind of noticed, Karen, that you said you I know that during the construction of the library, there was a tree report taken, and several of the trees that were removed did have Dutch elm's disease. So it's very prevalent. When it spreads quickly. That's why we're hoping to address the one tree, and then trying to, truthfully, there at this point in time, there's only management strategies. There's no cure. You can do injections. You can do monitoring. So we'll put together a management strategy on how we'll try to keep an eye out moving forward. But once they have the Dutch elm disease, it moves pretty quickly through the trees.
Yeah, and can spread to healthy trees very quickly. So we want to make sure we take care of that.
Actually, just by having two trees by each other, and if the roots are touching, the Dutch elm disease can spread that way.
Do you know, within 2 years of that library being built, they were hiring an arborist from the Portland parks to come out and spray our trees.
Right.
So you've only got a 114-year problem there. Mm-hmm. One suggestion, my first suggestion was going to be, get the permit first. But once you've got the permit, or once you have a plan for tree removal, is getting more proactive and getting more information out there. From what I could see, because I'm on Facebook and Nextdoor constantly, the first thing that hit was they took the trees down.
Yeah.
And I've not seen a good explanation of why it was done. You've got all the guesses, and I talked to so-and-so and they said it was a perfectly healthy tree, and there's a tree at Barclay School, and now we're having a fit about that one. Have Kristen start a talking tree Facebook page for the city or something to just say, hey, here's this beautifully healthy tree. Have you ever seen it? And this one's really sad. Because trees have life cycles.
Yeah.
They get diseases, they get old, they get damaged.
Yeah.
I love trees too, but some trees have to come down. Some commit suicide, like the one in front of Mount Pleasant School. And some are immediately dangerous and you can't do anything about it. But I don't think we've ever really gotten out ahead of the Facebook uproars. Mm-hmm. So if the information was out there already, or if the information went someplace where somebody like me could say, oh, hey, I know you're upset, but here's the arborist report on this tree.
I think just seeing that picture of the oak kind of speaks volumes too. You take a look at that tree and you can see definitely that it's in decline. And something that I'm glad that you said that, because this was the from the arborist who had given the original information to us, and was actually there and at a later date and had stated the oak tree now has a full-blown infestation of oak carpenter moth, and I documented a fungal fruiting body that looked similar to Ganoderma, a common decay fungus in oaks that weakens the wood. Due to these factors, I strongly recommend mitigation action in the next 30 days. At the very least, fencing the area and not allowing the children to play directly under the area is strongly recommended. This tree remains a very high risk. So, the fact that a professional came, gave us that information, social media and all those types of things, I'll let Phil and the communications folks address those. But, we just, we work really hard. We do care very much about our canopy, our trees.
But if I knew that was posted someplace, I can respond on Facebook and Nextdoor saying, hey, take a look at this. This is why it was done.
Yeah.
But not having those things electronically available, it's like, well, I sound like everybody else. Well, I was told that the tree was really sick.
Yeah.
I didn't go out and check it out or listen with my stethoscope.
And we did do a press release that went out and was posted on the website, which kind of detailed a lot of the information that we just spoke to. The oak tree was definitely needed to come out. And if you've talked to anybody that had said, oh, we could have saved it, we could not have. It was a beautiful tree. And honestly, the first time I saw the tree when I came here, 3 years ago, that was one of the first things that struck me just looking at that property was the tree has fantastic structure. It was obviously a beautiful old tree that was well cared for. It was unsafe, and we couldn't have it so close to structure and so close to where children recreate.
I was going to say this to the end, but the goals of the Natural Resource Committee is to have a annual meeting, joint meeting with you. You don't have such a call on your piece. This came out of our last meeting, but we've got a heritage tree program, and of course, we wanted to have that as one of our items in a joint session. Mm-hmm. And the other one was to look at the trail master plan.
Yeah.
And so at one point, maybe we can be involved in terms of the heritage tree process, because not many people have nominated, and we're interested in having that on public trees as well. Yeah. So at one point, we should have a meeting to that effect, and that might guide the process as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I have had side conversations with Dee Dee. I know she's very interested in the Heritage Tree Program and has spoken with me on numerous occasions about specific trees or tree groves in our system. As a tree grove, I have a little bit more hesitancy with that, but as individual trees, I think that is a fantastic approach, and I would love to. I told her, I said, let's get the process started. She was looking at one tree specifically at Park Place, and I said, write the report. I will greenlight this on our end, whatever you need. I have not seen anything from her. If there are trees, we've talked about a couple of the sequoias at the cemetery. They're very close to some of our built infrastructure. They're fantastic trees, and we obviously can nominate them. I would just, again, with being closer to infrastructure, it's difficult to, as Jonathan and I have had a conversation specific to the Veterans Memorial and what, taking up that slab might do to the trees that obviously will have some roots within that area, but they're rather large trees, and we'd love to be able to keep them as healthy as possible, as long as possible. So, yeah, we're open to that conversation, and especially with the arborist report no longer being an issue, hopefully rather soon, and something that the Natural Resources Committee is pushing. I think we can do that even more easily in our system. So, yeah, be happy to work with NRC to put together a strategy.
Yes.
The other, unless there's further questions on maintaining trees, I did have one other item on trees in Oregon City, which is was brought forward by Doug. Thank you for sending this to me. The Hiroshima trees in application form. So there's the Oregon Forestry Department, Oregon Department of Forestry, that has trees that seeds which were collected from trees in Japan that were bombed during Hiroshima and during World War II, and actually survived that, and the seeds were brought over, were planted. The trees are not super big at this point. They're in 2-gallon pots, but they would like to, as the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombing, spread those trees around in the state of Oregon. And so we have an opportunity here. The deadline is fast approaching. It's October 4th. So
Do they glow at night?
we'll find out. See, maybe that's our solution to lighting in the parks here. And so the trees species that are available, we have ginkgos, and there's also persimmon, a limited quantity of persimmon trees. The ginkgos, the problem with them is that they have male and female trees. The female trees are rather stinky, but you don't know if it's a male or female tree until they're about 20 years old. And so we will plant them, and 15 to 20 years from now, we will find out if...
Sure not to designate them as heritage trees too soon.
Right. So, part of the project is to interpret the planting as well, so to put signage to make sure that it's really maintained well, and to do some type of ceremony for the planting. So finding the right location where we might have a very stinky tree near areas that are close to the public use is something that we've struggled with, trying to find an appropriate location. One suggestion Jonathan had was that maybe the persimmon tree could be the approach, and to put them put it at the end of the Oregon Trail property. And there's just behind the garden there is which I never knew that.
Yeah, small orchard.
And he was like, "Hey, we have an orchard there." I was like, "Oh, we have an orchard there. Okay." So possibly that is an ideal location for the tree.
I have an alternative suggestion if it works. I mean, that wooded park next to the Pioneer Cemetery was the sister city to Tatashina. Sister city is our sister city. Mm-hmm. It's built by the Friends of the sister city, mm-hmm. And I think it would be really appropriate if there was space there to plant a tree, because it's a direct tie into Japan.
At the Pioneer Center? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The space is a little bit...
I realize that.
At the community center you're talking about? Pioneer Community Center?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just a male tree. I live across the street.
How many people have smelled a ginkgo fruit?
Obviously,
Yeah, it's very pungent.
Get everything from to vomit.
There used to be a major key tree, Trees for Tea, written by a guy named Peck. That was the big reference that was used for all trees in Oregon. And he described the female ginkgo smelling like rotten dog vomit.
Lovely.
If we're going to get these trees, mm-hmm. are there going to be restrictions with these trees? Are there strings attached? Because if we get an extra smelly one in the wrong area in 15 years and can't remove it,
right,
we're going to have issues.
You want to do it right, and that's why I was leaning more towards if we could do the persimmon, incorporate it into this area where we already have an existing orchard area. And it'd also be nice because we could incorporate it into part of the end of the Oregon Trail, the story. There's a lot of reading material there when you visit, so.
Yeah, I think they underlined in the highlighted section, we do not want to see these trees cut down simply because people don't like the smell of their fruit. So, trying to find the right location for them, the ginkgos actually require.
Nobody wants it in their backyard, right?
Yeah, I think 25 feet by 25 feet is what they're requesting for the amount of space reserved for the tree. So putting something like that, the Pioneer Center would not be.
Is that because of the smell?
Just
No,
for the root zone.
Just the size of the tree. Okay.
Yeah.
So I second
But the
Jonathan's
persimmon we
plan.
can do, yeah.
Yeah.
And anybody have opposition to Jonathan's plan? No, Jonathan, we like your plan.
Great, perfect, thank you. So that's all I had for trees in Oregon City Parks, unless there's further questions. Great, thank you, John. Go get some sleep.
Yeah, you'll have to be back at work, yeah.
So I know we try to be done by 9 o'clock typically,
Yeah,
but
that's.
so we have several items on here still, obviously. So if you want me to speed through some of them, just to the chairs.
First of all, I'm going to declare a 10-minute break, and then I'll give you till 10 after 9. How's that?
Fair enough. Oh, it's unmuted.
We're back. All right, Clackamas Park Master Plan.
Great. So this is a continuation of the joint city commission meeting / PRAC meeting that we had recently to discuss the Clackamas Park Master Plan. I do have the slide deck available if we want to go through any of that, and I provided copies of the master plan as discussed at the last meeting, so that you have a copy that you can doodle on and ideas as we discussed, and I'll go through this very quickly. So as we discussed, one of the city commission goals is to revisit a portion of the waterfront master plan, including the Clackamas Park, which would be the boat ramp location, the RV park, and the city-owned properties across the street, the overflow parking. So I'm going to go very quickly through the boat ramp position. This is, again, just an overview of the original proposed boat ramp, which was 350 feet downriver from the existing ramp. So we have the existing ramp here. We have the original proposed ramp location by the Oregon State Marine Board and their hydrologist and engineers that they hired to look at the location. And then here is the revised ramp location, which is about 150 feet from the proposed location to try to mitigate some of the loss of the green space in that area. So again, we had 4 kind of major options available. Move the ramp downriver 350 feet as originally proposed, move it downriver 200 feet as the modified version, keep the boat ramp in the current location, or remove the boat ramp. And to the conversation that we had around, are these really the only 4 options? These are the only 4 feasible options at this point, unless the city wants to put in a lot of time and money into looking at other locations. I know that folks are interested in possibly looking at the Willamette or other areas. Some of the restrictions on that is that the infrastructure that would be required on that area would have to basically move the whole restroom, parking lot, everything, asphalt over to the other side of the park, which is obviously expensive. The other piece is there would be a lot more study work that would need to be completed. The Willamette has more contaminants. There would be additional study that would be required there, being downstream from the mill properties and things that are upriver. Additionally, you see a lot more flow in that area, particularly during high water events. And so any debris coming down, you would have to have appropriate booms in place And there's, again, many different factors. So whether or not it would be supported by the permitting agencies, it would be something that we probably would have to do a lot of the legwork on our own, which would be very expensive and time consuming, and then possibly not even be accepted by the permitting agencies eventually. So these were the four primary options that seemed reasonable, feasible, that we might be able to accomplish given city resources and partnerships with the Marine Board and Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Phil, can I ask a question right here?
Yes, sir.
I do remember that Commissioner Smith was the one that brought up some frustration about these being the only four options we were looking at.
Yeah.
What I don't remember, though, is which one or two he had been pushing for to be on this list.
I do not
Was it the Willamette side? Is that what it was? I don't remember what he specifically said. He was frustrated wasn't here.
Yeah.
And he had requested it multiple times or whatever.
I recall Commissioner O'Donnell asking why these were the only options and that there are other options. I don't recall Rocky asking that specifically at this meeting.
Okay.
But he could have. I don't
Maybe
recall.
I'm mixing two different comments, but nonetheless, do you remember what, I guess as far as the commissioners go, and unless anybody here has any other requests, but what the other options were they were hoping would be considered?
I know we have heard from individuals that they would like us to look at the Willamette.
The Willamette side, is probably the big one?
The
most popular one that's not on the list?
That's the other option that I've heard from individuals. I have not heard any other suggestions beyond looking at the Willamette.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I did look at the video, and Commissioner O'Donnell's comments had to do with angling the boat ramp at a steeper angle. I'm wondering if that might in fact be considered, because it may make it so it's more. He was angling it for the purpose of people docking at the boat, but I was thinking in conjunction with the current parking lot that might work very well at the site, but perhaps. Here's the old one, and if it was angled out, we probably could actually have more of that roadway used without interfering with some of that green space.
Yeah.
Let me just pull a point up here I'm talking about. Right. Does it show? Yeah, it shows it. If it were angled, if it actually went out at an angle, it's possibly the approach of it could come through this area, which is all rocky stuff anyway, and have less impact on the, get back onto the thing we're on tape, but have less impact on the green area. And his point that was a benefit to the boaters themselves, but it might be something of a plus in terms of our general park use too.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can probably look at angling it a little bit more. I know one of the concerns of the hydrologist that spoke was the riprap kind of being in this area and needing to try to use that as much as possible. That permitting wise, the Army Corps of Engineers would probably not be happy with extending riprap area further down. And so needing to kind of be within, basically, I think it ends kind of in this area, needing to be in this area for the boat ramp. The other thing that he brought up was, and again, I'm not a boater, so I will rely on others' experience on the water, but one of the things that he spoke about was the ability for folks to, if it is angled much, is to approach along the river's edge, so close to the ramp. And so that was one of the things that he pointed out, was that if you get too far of an angle, it can be difficult to approach and make sure that you're safe without hitting the edge and whatnot. But I think that, I mean, it sounds reasonable to me as a layman looking at a boat ramp, that angling it a little bit more, and that would take out a little bit less of the green space in that area.
Derek?
Well, I wanted to preface this with, I think stakeholders, just in case, in this case, the people that are using the boat ramp are highly important. But after listening to the hydrologist and talking to some of the commissioners, I really think that gravel bar is not going to go anywhere, and that we're just putting off the inevitable.
Right.
That a dock is not going to work there.
Right.
All we're doing is saying that, well, it'll work for now, but in 5 years, whoever's sitting here is going to have that same conversation, and we're just pushing it off. And then if we do anything now, we're going to remove a lot of foliage and trees, probably, in my opinion, unnecessarily, because in a few years it's going to be removed again. Because that gravel bar is not going to go anywhere but get bigger.
It's bigger. So one statement that you made too close to the end was a comment that if we decide not to replace it, that there's a $250,000 something that's got to be paid. If we do replace it, how much are we spending?
That was my question.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the current, so part of the design work would be to include cost estimates. And so the 350 feet downriver, I think we were looking at over $1 million for that current location. The cost would be more than likely absorbed, about 75% of it, through the Marine Board and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. If the proposed revised ramp location were, if we could find a way to do it in with a reasonable budget, which would be, I would imagine the Marine Board, and my conversations with the state have been that they would balance, obviously, the cost of putting it 350 feet downriver as opposed to the 150 feet upstream. And so if they were to expend, $1 million on the 350 foot downriver, they may look at it as maybe the city needs to take on more of the cost if it's an additional expense. So if it's 1.5 million instead of 1.2 million, maybe the additional $300,000 would need to be secured by the city as opposed to by the Marine Board as a grant. They didn't give me a specific that's what they would expect, but they said if it was comparable, they probably would anticipate being a similar percentage that they typically would do, which is around a 75% of the cost of the project.
So basically, we break even or spend less if we don't replace it, and we don't have to pay to fix it again in 5 to 10 years.
Right. We don't need it.
So I have asked the Marine Board to give me a more specific dollar amount that would be anticipated. The conversation around, so to back up, and I know that there was some frustration from some of the commissioners. Originally, we had put this on our biennium budget and goals to do a full public engagement process around the master plan for the park. When we discussed it briefly at our goal setting meeting in January, February, the commission said, we don't really want to do a full master park until maybe we should talk about this a little bit more. And so I brought it to them to talk about it a little bit more before we went out for an RFP for the community engagement process. And at that time, they said, well, look at the mitigation, come up with some solutions, give us all the information that you can get working with your stakeholders, and bring that information back. So at that point, I brought the information back to the last meeting, which included revised proposed ramp location, which included the cost estimates, which included the options A, B, C, D, which also included possible mitigation within the entirety of the footprint of the park. And so at that point, that was the first opportunity that I had to really provide that information. So I take a little bit of exception to the why are we now just hearing about this, because that was the first time that they'd given me the opportunity to provide that information.
Well, and I'll say, I've launched boats there 50 years ago and more recently. Until this presentation, I had no idea that gravel bar had gotten that bad. And you're right, it's just going to continue to grow, and dredging doesn't happen anymore. So the utility of that space for a launch is going away because of that gravel bar. You know, they're gonna have a great park on the other side because it'll start growing out over the gravel. But,
Of course, the next flood could wash that gravel bar away, too.
Yeah, and that's one of the
Never
things
know.
that you can't really fully, I mean, it's nature, it's gonna,
next
It's gonna
January, the
change.
river may decide it's gonna go back over there.
I have a question. Commissioner Smith, and I believe you in that joint meeting was mentioning something like three docks in Mildred Bar. Is that right? Now, do any of those open onto the Clackamas itself, or do they all open onto the?
No, they're on the limit.
they're all in the limit.
I guess my feeling, I mean, if it's an issue that the gravel bar is going to give us trouble anyway, and anything we do there might be wouldn't live long, that'd be one thing. But I think there is a benefit to having a launch on into the Clackamas River itself. There are a lot of people that actually like to do their recreational activities, including fishing, in the Clackamas itself, and so I guess it's something that has served people that have come to Oregon City and some of them that have lived there. We've had a boat ramp there ever since I've lived in Oregon City, and that's for 30 years. And if we can have such a facility there, I think it's great. But if in fact life is going to be short no matter what, then I guess there's no point.
Yeah.
And we live with what we got until it goes away, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't see why you still can't fish on the Clackamas by putting your boat in on the Willamette.
Oh, I know you can.
Right, and we save a lot of green space and a lot of heartache. But they made the mistake. They're the ones that put that dock in there, the Marine Board. They said that was the place to put it, and now they're trying to punish us for taking it out by saying you owe us whatever the money is, $250,000 for a mistake that they made.
50 years ago, it wasn't bad. So.
You're going
We
to
had-
hold accountable.
Right.
So I know that we had this started this conversation at the joint work session, and if you're interested in me going through the specifics of benefits and challenges, I can. But I think we already kind of know those benefits and challenges from those different areas. What we came up with, again, as hopefully this is totally conceptual, but an ability to look at how do we utilize or best utilize the footprint of the park, not just looking at where the boat ramp is located, but looking at how the boat ramp location interacts with the remainder of the park space. One of the challenges, again, that we've dealt with as from an operational standpoint is that the current RV park sits in an area that floods regularly. We typically close the end of November. We typically reopen sometime in the early spring when the last of the heavy rainfall has occurred, and we kind of know the snow melt and everything that we won't flood again. So typically in end of March or to end of April, we'll reopen the RV park. The conceptual design shows reopening the RV park across the street in the overflow parking area. It's approximately the same size. They're both about 2.2 acres in size, which would open up a lot more green space within the footprint of the park along the water's edge. We also anticipated moving creating a zone that is above the typical high water mark here, which would include play amenities, the skate park, creating additional green space, and the restroom in the current location, and moving the car traffic into an area where you have connectivity there. And then one of the main things we really tried to do is to speak to the connectivity for bikes and pedestrians in the area. And so the current park is very car focused, and what we would hopefully end up with when and if we make any changes to the park is a more connected park space for pedestrians and a safer space for users. So I am happy to hear any feedback. Again, we'll have, I think the next meeting that we have scheduled, which sounds like everyone's able to participate, is October 8th with the City Commission. So we'll have a work session scheduled on that date, 6 p.m. start time. I'll send out a reminder to the group through email, but I think hopefully we'll be focusing a lot more on this conceptual plan and what we could reconfigure the park to look like as opposed to the specific boat ramp location.
Well, I love this, and I think moving the RV park's the smartest idea. Doug?
Yeah, I guess the question is if the boat ramp is not a long-term thing for us, do we need the kind of parking space we're talking about? Can that area be used for something else besides a parking lot? So I loved, I mean, when I watched the video so forth, I love Ms. Novak's comment, is it a park with a boat ramp or is it a boat ramp with a park? I think that was a great thing, and I think we have to look at it. It is a park with a boat ramp, and if it's not part of the long-term future, can that parking area be used for a better recreational purpose?
It would be a park without a boat ramp.
Huh? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, that's right too. Yeah.
Yeah, and in this drawing, we do have quite a few of the, almost this entire area is for trailer parking, and it gets used for non-trailer parking use during the middle part of the summer when the boat ramp is not used as heavily. But we would definitely be able to shift the parking areas if there is no ramp there.
Any other comments? I guess we're ready for the next meeting.
Great, perfect.
Okay, Buena Vista Club.
Very good.
I'm practicing.
You can say Buena Vista. It's Buena Vista.
No major updates to share on that. We're still looking at trying to get construction estimates from construction firms for the Buena Vista Clubhouse. So more to come.
Okay, legacy projects, standing update.
So very similarly, we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes, particularly in combination with the new property owner. So I was on hand on Tuesday, went and met with the Grand Ronde Tribal Council and had a very nice meeting with them. We're continuing behind the scenes to work on how to incorporate some of the ideas and things that are of importance to the tribe as we build out the phase 1 and future developments on the site. So we will have, I'm sure, additional information to share at a future time, but we're still working behind the scenes on quite a few of those items.
Okay. Who was on the dog park subcommittee with Lisa?
I'm sorry?
The dog park subcommittee.
There's somebody volunteered to work with her, I think.
We haven't really done anything since our last meeting, so.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember, did we discuss, we didn't discuss this yet with the group. So we are planning on doing a survey, which I meant to get out about a week ago.
That's right, yeah.
It has not happened yet, so I will hopefully get it out in the next day or two.
That's right.
To get additional feedback from the community, and then we'll continue to have that conversation long-term around best approach for fenced dog parks, whether or not we continue to have the off-leash areas in their current locations and what that looks like as a system of dog parks.
I had a question.
We'll look forward to future updates.
How will you distribute that survey to the community?
So the survey will be done electronically on our website. We have contacted the community communications coordinator to get additional social media blasts out. And I've gone to a couple of the neighborhood association meetings and discussed the survey that's going to be out on the website. So hopefully we'll have some folks that are knowledgeable of it and will be able to participate. So yeah, any help you can give in getting the word out there, we would appreciate.
Bill?
I remember, on the same subject, will that survey contain any information? I don't think we covered that, but any more information about the possibility of expanding the number of sites for dog parks. And I'll caveat that with what I remember Jonathan had said when we were taking our tour several months ago as we passed Stafford Park, a perfect park for dog parks, and I'm wondering if that's something that we can pursue.
Yeah, I mean, that could be an option. Stafford Park is fenced currently on two sides. We do have we'd have residents. You know, one of the things you always worry about is residents being so close to a dog park. But
and someone would like that because they have dogs,
right? So that's one of the things we would probably want to do a more thorough public engagement with the neighboring property owners and the community in that area. But yeah, I think it would be. It's not a heavily used park in its current condition. We have had just to the west of Stafford Park, there's a couple of acres that are in kind of pre-application process for multifamily development. So there will be quite a few neighboring property owners nearby, and most likely in the next couple of years as well.
So is that too late to put that on the survey? Or was that part of one of the questions was, do you have suggestions for other sites for dogs?
Yeah, I think that's one of the questions that we had incorporated. I don't think it called that park out specifically, but yeah.
Okay.
Is the survey going to be site specific or not?
So it will be site specific for the current off-leash dog areas, but not specific to other potential areas. Yeah.
Okay, Filbert Run.
So we have some good news. Filbert Run, the funding is official, and we have the grant funding in place for development of Filbert Run Park. And so hopefully, so it's $391,000. Yay. So hopefully, with that information, I know that we discussed at a previous meeting coming back and doing probably a naming subcommittee to very similar process to what we did for the Woods Memorial Park. So interested to see if there are two members of this group that would be interested in forming a subcommittee to work with staff. And so the last grouping that we did, which seemed like there was a lot of positive feedback, both from this group as well as the public. We have two members of PRAC, the Parks Director, the CIC staff liaison, which is Christina Robertson Gardner, to act on behalf of just communicating information back to the CIC, as well as a representative of the City Commission and a representative of the neighborhood for which the park is located. So we would do outreach to the neighborhood association, ask them for representation, and then reach out again to the City Commission, as well as the two members of this group. So if there's interest from...
I live about 3 blocks away from it. I'd be interested in serving.
Excellent. We have one more that would be interested.
I'd be interested for the experience. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Got your volunteers.
Perfect. So very similar to what we did last time, we will probably do just a call out for any interest in any name that folks would like for us to consider. We send that out, and for the last one, we received back quite a few different names. Some over the top. Parky McParkface, I think, was one of the. Actually, maybe a couple of the suggestions.
That was my wife. I swear to God.
And narrow it down to a grouping of 4 or 5 options, and then we do a subsequent vote of the people to come up with the final decision. So there'll only be maybe 3 meetings total as a group, and so it's pretty slick process, and we'll be able to get that name out, and then as we're starting the planning process for the park, we'll have a new name for the park as well.
Be interesting to see the suggestions.
Yes.
Okay, PRAC goals.
So a couple of items that you have in front of you. We have the current goals as adopted for 2019 to 2021, and then Troy and Chris took on the task of putting together a more strategic approach to how we evaluate our goals. And so maybe I'll turn it over to Troy to discuss the goals and the current format that they're suggesting.
Well, what we did is we did our best to make sure that since the verbiage and the wording was already approved, we wanted to make sure we stuck with that. But our goal was simply to put these in form of, so they're trackable goals, so they're actually SMART goals and not just ideas. And so we wanted to make it clear, but also then have a measure of success. And we chose the format we did because it allowed us to put a check mark at the end, if you will, with the date completed. And then at that point, we can either revise the goal once it's been completed and revise it, or we can just take it off the list if it's completed or no longer necessary. So really all we did was change a little bit of the wording to get rid of some of the things that were like stay informed and monitor and things that were really subjective, and then just get down to, well, just for example, the first one, review the goals. It's something you can check off and say, yeah, we reviewed them. And so very easy to track. And then on the back, additional items of importance, we certainly wanted to leave those on there because they are important, or at least important to some or most or all of the board. But they're not really goals. They're just things to kind of keep on the radar. And while our number one, or one of our, I shouldn't say number one, but one of our objectives was to make these trackable, another one of our objectives was to make sure that the community, when they review these, can see that they have got, that we're doing something. That it's not just a, trust me, we're talking about it, but rather a check mark or a date that it's completed, but that also we have some additional items of importance that are not yet goals. They might become goals at some point. They might not, depending on how things move and what the board decides.
I like the format, but these aren't our current goals. These are from the previous biennium. And actually, I like the format. I like the tracking. It's something at the end of each meeting that we could have on the agenda to figure out what to fill in for the following month.
Yeah, good catch though, because
no, Phil got it.
Well, and Chris and I did this together, so I'm going to take as equal responsibility. He did the part of putting them in the format, and I did the part of revising them for trackability.
So now you can look
neither
forward.
of us caught that.
Now you can look forward to revising the current one.
Well, because I didn't when they came over, I didn't compare to this. I just took it for what it was.
And,
so,
and my
yeah,
apologies,
good catch.
I didn't catch it until I was printing them, and I did some minor. I put the draft on there and did presented at the meeting tonight, but I didn't notice it until I was printing them either.
Well, then I guess rather than talk about the goals, we can talk about the format, and we'll get back to the other part.
Well, the goals are already set, and I will say we spent more than enough time setting the goals. We have biennial goals, but they would be beautiful in your lovely format.
Well, yeah, like I said, we don't need to talk about the goals. We can talk about the format.
I like the format.
Yeah, format's good.
Yeah, format's fine.
Nicely done.
Okay.
More chimes? Bill?
I'm fine with it, yes.
Garrett?
Oh, yeah.
Your format just got approved.
Okay, so now we'll take our format and work on the goals.
No, the goals are coming.
No, we'll work on it.
Okay, any other general new business?
I do have a couple of items that I'll try to get through rather quickly for you. So the first item I'd like to point out, I included in your packets an email that I received from Paul Edgar earlier today requesting that PRAC looks at possibly closing Old Kenema Park earlier than the 10 o'clock time that our parks currently close, as that it's been kind of a hub for illegal-ish and illegal activity in the parking lot and in the park after dark. And so maybe at a future meeting, we could add this as a topic to discuss is, park hours and how we deal with some of these unintended misuses of parks during times when they're not typically used for the right reasons.
Well, and I'll say before the meeting I broached this with Phil because the discussion that we had over Hillendale Park about the fact that we could light the pickleball courts, but the rest of the park isn't lit. I was curious as to why every single park has a 10 p.m. closing time.
Right.
And if maybe we need to look at that across the board at all the parks.
Yeah.
So Portland Parks and Recreation, it's dawn to dusk. Dawn to dusk, and quite a few. Have you seen?
I manage 2 parks that are open till midnight, and so they're closed 12:01 a.m. to like 4:59 a.m.
So ones that are not signed with hours.
The newer parks have a longer, but they're also programmed parks.
Right.
So in order for activities to be held, like movies, concerts, that sort of thing. So yeah, and I think that's where the one fits all approach doesn't always fit.
Right.
If not all parks are cookie cutter parks. So.
Okay, so, and my recommendation was we put it on a future agenda item as a broader topic.
Which I fully support. I think that'd be.
And when
great.
you do that, when you say illegal-ish, that can be littering or anything else. So can you maybe be a little specific as to what we're addressing so we know
Oh yeah,
kind of some of the severity and everything?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can't somebody being in a car or being parked in a parking lot at 5 o'clock when it's dark in the wintertime is not illegal. Having your music at a certain level before sound curfew is not illegal. Being adjacent homeowner to an area where you have a lot of young people hanging out and volumes of music up, and that can be troubling to neighbors, but it's not necessarily enforceable by police department. And so looking at the other things that are happening, drinking, drug use, littering, vandalism, those are things that are illegal. But you get some of both when you have parks that are being used in times where you don't have them being used for the appropriate reasons. So it's a balance for sure.
Yep. Okay. Further reports.
So the other thing that I wanted to run by the group is Mountain View Cemetery news. I have requested Karen to sign off as the vice chair of the group, a letter of support for a grant being written by staff for software to help maintain the cemetery, and so to help us track both from a historical perspective as well as our active burials, enable us to track that better. So we're applying for a grant through Oregon State Parks, and we would hope that the group would support by motion a vote to have Karen sign off on a letter of support.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and
Any
seconded.
discussion? Roll call.
Oh, thank you. Daniels.
Aye.
Bollinger.
Aye.
Kugel.
Aye.
Maury.
Aye.
Neely.
Aye.
Hammock.
Aye.
And Sargent.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then the other one is the staff are working on the Veterans Memorial project, and we will have Karen representing the Friends Group. I'm hopeful that she will be there representing the Friends Group. We're looking for one more representative if there's anyone interested in joining a meeting on site on October 24th at 10 a.m. Doesn't necessarily have to be today that you are volunteering. I could send out something when you're looking at your calendars and respond via email, but if anyone has interest on that day and availability and can help out, we'd love to have one more representative of PrAC there.
Come on, Doug, you cared about it.
So I can send out an email. I'll send that out unless there's somebody that's really excited about it to hopefully get one more representative. Again, that would be October 24th at 10 a.m. And probably would be about an hour, just meeting with the consultant and members of the VFW and the Friends Group to kind of look at best approach.
October 24th is also our next meeting, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
It
found
is.
that.
Yep. Great, so I'll send out an email. I appreciate your consideration. And that's all I have for other general business.
And by the way, I did have one member report. Saturday, October 12th is the next cemetery cleanup at Mountain View from 9 to 12. And you can find it on Solve to sign up for it. And I picked October 12th because I have a terrible sense of humor. It's the anniversary of the Columbus Day storm, and I'm hoping we can clean up where the Pioneer Oak was until the Columbus Day storm. Okay.
Any other member reports?
All right, so what is recreation report we have reviewed, I assume?
You've already reviewed. Chapin Restroom Project was the only other item, and just want to give you an update. The final inspections have passed for the structure. We're doing the asphalt work next week, and then hopefully we'll be able to reopen everything, and we'll have a fancy new restroom that folks can use. Then, you know, the old restroom was very well used, and we're happy to have a new one.
Looks beautiful, by the way.
Yes, it does.
It's Chapin 3 nights a week in the fall. So I've been watching it go up.
Yeah, and the team did a great job, and I want to thank both Denise Conrad and Jonathan Waverly and John's team on helping to manage that project.
Back on the recreation, et cetera report, I'm not sure if we compliment Denise enough on what she produces. Those printed reports are incredibly informative.
And I'll say it's a joint effort as well. So Jonathan and his team put together the park side, the other information is provided by the recreation staff, and then Denise does do the coordination and review to make sure that everything looks like it should, and all typos are hopefully caught and those types of things before they make it to you. But I would agree. I think it's a great way for you guys to get that information, and hopefully you enjoyed looking through it.
I gave her credit because she emails it out, so that compliment now goes to Denise, Jonathan, and everyone else
Rochelle
who
and Kathy.
contributes to
Yep.
that wonderful report.
Plus all of their
Kathy,
teams.
Rochelle,
Yep.
yes, okay. And we are adjourned.
Well, wait a minute. Agenda item.
I'm sorry, future agenda items, I didn't scroll down.
I want the next prac extended an extra hour so we can take out Bill Lewis.
I think we have to adjourn before we imbibe.
An extra work session afterwards.
What I am recommending is that we take out Bill Lewis after the next meeting.
When we aim for a 1 hour meeting.
Well, but we can stay out as long as we want.
There we go. I don't know, my mother might.
You said take out?
Take out Phil, yeah, I think he means
You might want to clarify, for the record, there's two meanings of that. There's two meanings of that. You want to clarify what
take
you
it
mean.
out, or do you want to take him out?
Well, in one
Everything you say is recorded.
In one sense, he's taking himself out.
That's true. That's already decided. All right, any other future agenda
I did
items?
have an additional request. Is it possible that if you were to talk to the city commission, I know there was some interest about having a joint meeting with city as a work session on SDCs and the use of them in the different ways they can and are spent. Our parks SDCs.
As a joint meeting between the commission.
Yes.
And just my suggestion, I probably would suggest that we maybe have an internal meeting before incorporating the commission, but it's fully, if you'd like to have a joint meeting on that, we can look at that as
Is there a
well.
review going on already? Are they reviewing SDCs
For SDCs, for parks.
in general?
So the Public Works, so we have, Public Works manages SDCs for streets and transportation, storm, sewer. The Parks SDCs are managed by Parks. The Public Works Department assists with identifying the charges that are assessed to the owners during the construction process. We have punted the evaluation of SDCs until after the Parks and Rec Master Plan is updated, which would then create a project list, which would then dial in the amount of SDCs that we would need to charge in order to provide the projects at the appropriate rate. And
Okay, so that more answers what Bill was asking.
yeah, but on,
That
I
would
think
be
what,
better later when we're down to the punt line or whatever.
yeah, and at that point, definitely, I mean, as far as it relates to what we would like to charge, and what you would have is a very large project list, and then you probably need to whittle it down a little bit in order to look at what's feasible. You know, I know that Bill has asked for, you know, looking at lighting projects, you know, within our current SDC use, and kind of the approach that we've often had currently is around acquisition and development of new parks, as opposed to projects in current parks that would improve the usability. We did put aside about $100,000 in this current budget cycle in SDC funds to use on some of those projects, and we could probably have a conversation around how we're going to use those funds. One of the things that we were going to use those funds to had identified was for the lighting project at Hillendale Park as the approach to the pickleball court areas. The grant funding was not selected, and so that's been kind of put on the back burner. But if you want to look at some of those projects, maybe create a list of kind of the additional items, I'd be happy to initiate that conversation in a future meeting.
And my point was also that I think maybe all the commissioners would be enlightened by the information you would have to share, and we would be in the presence at the same time to hear the same information. But maybe we could have a list of parks that, anyway, I think there's some value to that, to at least have that discussion at the commission level, as a work session at the commission level, as well as the level that we have here. And you've done a great job of the two times that we have asked for information on how SDCs are used and how we acquire them, and I think it would be helpful.
Okay. Knowing the commission's schedule, I probably wouldn't be around by the time we were able to put something like that together. But if we want to, at the October meeting, I definitely put on, a good initial approach. And then once the new director's on board, probably having that joint meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Great.
That'd be perfect.
We need, probably when the new director's on, we also need to have another session on funding of our parks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could pick that one up. Yeah. Although I agree with Bill, a little better explanation of SDCs might be useful, because I think Doug and I are the only two that have spent way too much time looking at them. All right, now we are adjourned.